begin this news hour with tensions in the South China Sea. China says it has successfully completed 3 days of military drills around the self-ruled island of Taiwan that it considers its own, raising the specter of conflict. Not for the first time, Beijing has warned that there can be no peace if Taiwan became fully independent. The military drills began shortly after Taiwan's leader Tsai Ing-wen met the U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in California. On the final day of exercises, China says planes carrying live ammunition practiced mock strikes and blockades of the island. Taiwan's defense ministry says it detected 11 Chinese warships and 59 aircraft. 39 of them entered Taiwan's air defense zone. Meanwhile, a U.S. naval destroyer has passed through waters claimed by Beijing in the South China Sea. These drills are somewhat more muted than the war games enacted after Mr. McCarthy's predecessor, Nancy Pelosi, visited Taipei last August. Here's China's Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin.
The spokesman of the Eastern Theatre Command of the PLA has already stated that from Saturday to Monday, the command would launch combat readiness patrol and military exercises around the Taiwan island. These operations serve as a stern warning against the collusion between separatist forces seeking Taiwan independence and external forces and against their provocative activities. These drills are necessary for safeguarding China's national sovereignty and territorial integrity. The One China principle is an established international consensus and a basic norm of international relations.
Well, we'll have more on that story in just a moment when we'll be talking to our U.S. correspondent, Eric Ham. But first, the U.S. Department of Justice is investigating how dozens of top-secret military documents ended up on the internet. The files appear to provide a detailed assessment of Russia's military capabilities in the war in Ukraine, as well as classified information on the Middle East and China. The published documents purport to show the degree to which the Ukrainian military is struggling in the conflict, but also supposedly show that the US has extensively penetrated Russian intelligence units and is also spying on close allies, including Ukraine's military and political leaders. The leak that was first reported by the New York Times includes details about Ukraine's military strength and its casualty counts, along with those of Russian forces. Staying in the U.S., 5 people have been killed in a shooting in Louisville, Kentucky. Several others were injured. It happened inside a bank on a main street in the city. Police say the suspect has been killed and that there is no longer a danger to the public. A police officer is reported to be among those injured. Well, for more on all these stories, let's bring in Arise U.S. correspondent Eric Ham, who joins us live from Washington. Good to see you, Eric. Let's start with that latest story. Yet another shooting, this time in Louisville, Kentucky. 5 people killed. Tell us more.
Yeah, and this one hits close to home, and closer to home, I should say, because we now see that the governor himself actually knew 2 of the people who were shot in this mass shooting. Now we're still getting details about the shooting that are coming in. We know that the shooter himself is also dead. We still don't know what type of weapon or weapons were used in this shooting, and also there's speculation that the individual who did the shooting perhaps worked at the local bank where the shooting took place. Now at this time, there still is also no motive as to why the person engaged in the shooting and who the actual victims were. But again, what it shows, Charles, is again another mass shooting. And again, the shootings have now begun to outpace the days in the United States as they continue. And again, we're talking about shootings. Just 2 weeks ago, there was a mass shooting in the state of Tennessee, in Nashville. This shooting took place in Louisville, Kentucky. These are states where the gun laws have been very lax and where we have seen oftentimes where Republican supermajorities have overridden governor vetoes to ensure that it is easier and very lax in order to actually get and attain these weapons of mass destruction in the United States.
Well, Eric, let's turn to those heightened tensions in the Taiwan Straits and the South China Sea. I understand those Chinese military drills have now ended. They'd been practicing precision strikes against the self-ruled island. At the same time, an American destroyer sailed near the Spratly Islands, which is an area claimed by Beijing and Japan. Japan saying it scrambled its own fighter jets. Is there a sense now in America, as the threat from China is being evaluated, that it is necessary to prepare for the possible invasion of Taiwan?
You know, Charles, that's a very complicated question to answer. What we do know is that even in the United States, as both Republicans and Democrats continue to lash out at China, and as China becomes far more aggressive in the South China Seas, what we continue to see is the United States, at least led by the Biden administration, continuing to tamp down on these heightened tensions between the two countries, and also making clear that it does not want war with China. Now, we do know in the Pentagon, however, there is a very different feeling and a very different tenor in terms of how they view China. In fact, we have heard from at least two two generals in the Pentagon who have stated that they believe that the United States and China will be at war by 2027. And we also know that many believe that that is the time frame that China is actually giving itself to actually take Taiwan back, and by force if necessary. But again, even though that's something that we're hearing from the military voices in the United States, the Biden administration is saying something very different, that they want to try to maintain the lines of communication between the United States and China. But what we continue to see is something very different actually on the ground in the South China Seas.
And let's turn to the US, where you are. That story that dozens of top secret military documents have ended up on the internet. Those documents purporting to show a lot of classified information on the Middle East and China, Russia's military capabilities, Ukraine as well. What's being said about these leaks?
Well, Charles, this is a leak that some believe is perhaps as big, if not bigger, than the Edward Snowden leak, where, of course, we know he absconded with an enormous treasure trove of secret information to Russia. But these leaks have already begun to shake Washington to its core, not just because of the sensitive nature of the information, but because of what the information actually reveals. And we're talking about information on both United States foes as well as its allies. In fact, it is not only causing tensions with major capitals around the world, but we also are now seeing that it's raising the tension level, particularly with the United States' most ardent supporter in the Middle East, and that's Israel. In fact, based on the information that was leaked, Israel believes, even before the leak, that the United States was behind the ongoing massive protests that are taking place in Israel. And now this information that has been leaked, they believe that that confirms that the United States is behind the tensions taking place domestically in Israel. But again, what we're seeing here is a massive effort, at least by the State Department and its diplomats, to try to bring some order to the situation, a very high profile embarrassment, nevertheless. But also what we're learning from our sources inside the Pentagon is that because of this leak, that now they have walled off much more sensitive information within the Pentagon, cutting out some key people who normally would have access to highly sensitive and classified information until they can figure out how this information, in fact, was leaked. And of course, we know that the Justice Department has opened an investigation into trying to get to the bottom of who leaked this information and how did they do so.
Eric, very revealing indeed. Thank you so much. Eric Ham, Arise US correspondent, talking to me there from Washington.